I got to see the inside and out of how they run their operation. It's pretty good.
Okay, please rise to the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome our guests this evening and those watching on cable. First order of business is we have minutes of January 11th, regular session. Mrs. Finipelli.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the January 11, 2016 regular session minutes as written.
Second?
Second by Mr. Yule. Any discussion? Mr. Prisco?
Just on page 1, Mr. O'Leary did vote yes, it just doesn't have him voting yes, even though it says voted 3-0. I know it's just a stupid little administrative thing. And then on page 3, FERC is not spelled with a K, it's with a C. I think that one should be corrected for sure. I wouldn't have brought up the other one, but since we're going to make that change, we may as well fix that one too.
Okay, on
Other
the
than that,
motion
it's good.
as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
FERC is just, it is with a C, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought- 'cause I-
FERC.
Unless you're in
Commission.
Germany.
Yeah.
Federal Energy Conservation. Federal Energy, not conservation.
I just want to make sure we got those right.
Okay, we have also executive session of January 11th.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the January 11, 2016 executive session minutes as written.
Second?
Second by Mr. O'Leary. Mr. Yule?
Are you up to further discussion yet?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, I just.
No, I was,
He was looking for a second, I believe, right?
no, I'm Mr.
O'Leary
O'Leary's
second.
second, and I was trying to figure out, after I said Mr. O'Leary, whether Mr. Yule really said it.
Right, that's what I thought you were
Yeah.
doing.
Mr.
No,
Yule?
I want to say, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like the record to show that I did not attend the executive session during the discussion of the health care benefits, rather than say that I was absent, because I don't want it to be implied that I was late. I was really on time, but I just did not participate. And I know it says later on that I arrived at a certain time.
You were not in the room.
So
You were not in the room.
I was, yeah, I did not
So
participate.
you were absent.
I was happy.
There's a difference.
You're right.
You
that's right,
abstained,
that's
really,
right.
is what it is.
Right, I actually recused myself and left the room, technically. So I'd like it to just simply say that I did not attend due to the conversation of healthcare benefits, rather than I was just absent.
Okay, I don't think
That's
anyone will
okay.
disagree with that. On the motion as amended, Jane, that you all set?
Yes.
As amended, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Anyone here for public comment? Probably not. Middle High School Athletic Facilities Committee. We have to appoint a Board of Selectmen representative. So we
This
talked
is-
about whether that should be a chairman
Did you say-
appointment as liaison or a board appointment. I think it should be a board appointment.
Well, is this a,
It's open for discussion. Mr. O'Leary?
this is at the suggestion of the school committee that it be formed?
Yes. Is that correct, Michael?
Yes, the request came to us via the superintendent and one of the members of the school committee.
I believe Mr. Webster is
Correct.
heading up this committee,
That's my understanding.
and they're looking for 2 members, or 1 member from this committee and a few others.
Yeah.
And I'd be more than happy to volunteer if anyone else isn't interested, but if there's someone else interested, that's fine too. Just 'cause I went through the turf stuff and-
I'd like to know more
Mr.
about it.
Yule.
What are they, more about it? What are they looking to accomplish? I know they have athletic fields all set to be built and so on, and, but I don't know to what extent.
Well,
So-
it's been all over the place, you know. It was that they were talking about, this current school finishing up over at the, where the old high school was, but then it's kind of too late to do that. Now they're talking about turfing the baseball field. That's what I heard. So, Mr. Prisco, you may know more, please.
Yeah, just a little, maybe a combination of both. So when the fields are completely done, they will be natural turf. the issue is, that's kind of associated with this, is that now that we took the high school down, where the bathrooms were adjacent to the turf field, we met the requirement, the code requirement for bathrooms. Now that that's gone,
I did
that
learn that.
becomes part of a new issue, I believe. Am I wrong, Mr.
No,
Gilberto?
you're not wrong.
And so this committee's gonna look at a strategy to try to solve that, and try to
As
come
a
up with.
first priority,
Yeah.
that's right. He did
What
say
we're
that.
trying to get is I believe they're gonna get a waiver for at least a year, and maybe if we continue with this committee in our researching solutions, that the code enforcement officer may even give us a little longer extension, so we can continue to vet these, because any solution is gonna cost the town money. But we have to vet the solutions to come up with it, or if we don't, then we're gonna lose the use of the turf field until we have adequate bathrooms that meet the code in town. But I think that's the number one priority, and I believe the turf field is something else that's gonna be part of those discussions in this committee. And Mr. Gilberto, if I said anything,
I would just maybe fine-tune that statement a little bit by saying that the facility prior to the changes that have taken place associated with the secondary school building project was operating under a waiver that was granted by a state board. And I believe that the building inspector's position was to continue to operate with that waiver, that the town would need to go to that board for approval. So he advised both Parks and Recreation and the school department as to how to do that, and I found out today that that hearing has been scheduled for sometime in the next 2 weeks. And Mr. DeCola is committed to go and represent the town with regard to this matter, along with, I believe, Mr. Tilton from the Parks and Recreation Department.
Mr. Yule,
Yes, just so I can get a good grasp of this. The turf field is the responsibility of Parks and Rec?
it's under town, it's under
It's
the
under town,
town's
so
responsibility.
It's not,
that
no,
field was transferred to Recreation
some
in order
time
to
ago,
utilize Hillview Commission money to
to build it.
build a field.
Right, and I recall that. So, we had an issue with bathrooms, and they say now that we can't use we will not be able to use the field if we don't solve the issue that Mike described,
The,
but,
the issue was that with the number of stands, you need a number of bathrooms. The waiver was provided because the location of the high school.
The old high
access, old high school, and access to the bathrooms there. That's gone,
I understand that.
so the waiver doesn't stand anymore.
I just want to connect some dots here, okay? This is not because the school is using the field, correct? It's anybody who uses the field. Which
Correct.
agency is dictating that
It's-
we have to meet this
You
requirement?
have a facility where people attend, and you have inadequate bathrooms. That facility currently is under the control of recreation.
Right.
We have state
So
plumbing
Even if it
codes.
was under control of the school, the problem would be the same.
It's a state plumbing code that we violate.
Right, okay, I'm with you on that. So why is the school doing this and not us?
Because the town side property, right, the turf field, we don't have any space there to install any kind of bathrooms to resolve this issue. The land that's available is on the school side.
Okay.
So the schools have to come, because at the end of the day, the schools can't have any of their football games there, any of the lacrosse games there,
Right.
right? That's becomes, it's a major problem for them. And it's a problem for us too. So that's why Parks and Rec are gonna be on that committee, and the only land that's available to come up with a solution is on the school government side. Maybe through this process, the research is to give up some more of that land and turn it over to town. I don't know. I think that's what's gotta be vetted as we go through this process to find a solution.
Okay, I guess the concern that I'm visualizing here is that the bathrooms are put on the school property, and then the state agency says, well, that's for the schools, this is
I don't
town
think that-
property. That's a concern that
No, I don't think that's an issue. It wasn't an issue before.
Exactly. Right.
We got permission because the bathrooms are at the high school. Walking distance, it's right there. The
It-
issue is there are no bathrooms now. There are a couple of bathrooms in the
Right.
team room, but that was never designed or planned, unfortunately, to provide for public bathrooms.
Okay, I'm just trying to connect those dots,
Okay.
thank you.
And I guess
Mr. Gilberto.
Not to prolong the conversation, but just a few clarifications. I believe that the approval of the waiver that came from the state board did not identify the high school as the reason for the waiver, but rather that the facility was a pre-existing facility, and that the nature of the improvements was not substantial in that board's. The nature of the 2009 improvements were not substantial, but that if there were additional improvements that were made, that they would require it to be revisited, and that the construction of the team rooms generated a substantial improvement that's requiring the revisiting. Coincidentally, there were also bathrooms within walking distance behind the facility, which are no longer there, only further highlighting the issue. So I just want to kind of give everyone the same information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. O'Leary.
Right, and what wasn't addressed in the school project was the requisite bathroom facilities that would be required because of the stadium seating, which maybe twice a year you would utilize to anywhere near full capacity, Thanksgiving Day football game and graduation. Other than that, it's several handfuls of people are utilizing the facility as far as stands other than the players. And at the time, when they looked at it, the state plumbing code would require like 40 toilets, which is absurd. So I think at the time, the secondary school building committee decided to opt not to meet those requirements at the time because of the costs, obviously, and hope for another waiver, which is not necessarily forthcoming in relation to, we may get a partial waiver in relation to the number of toilets that you need, but they're not going to say, they've already said that what we put in there for team rooms is not sufficient and it's not open to the
Right.
public. So,
Wouldn't matter.
so, obviously what's important here to me is if we're going to look at expanding, another turf field and incorporating more stands there, which would, again, trigger some more requirements for public facilities, is that Kerry Park area going to be put under the auspices of the enterprise, as was where the turf field is located, and then recreation would handle the booking of it and all the rest.
And that's part of these discussions.
So that,
So because this individual's going to be a voting member rather than what I would consider to be a liaison, I think it should take a board vote rather than appointment of the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. So I guess, one, is there
What's that?
anyone interested?
It would be interesting, but I wouldn't be able to do it.
I just heard Mr. Prisco say he would be interested, but he said that earlier. I don't know if he's
still in.
entertaining that.
No.
Anyone else?
that would be interesting, but I'm looking to fight over it.
What?
No, 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 but take it, I mean,
I'd be interested, but I'm not looking to fight
That's
over it.
no, you take it, I mean,
it's
no,
a-
if you're doing the other school stuff, it just makes a lot of
Yeah,
logic.
that's all. I mean,
It makes a
we
lot of
could do
logic
it
to have
by
you do it.
nominating
but I figured-
individuals.
Yeah, I was just
But if
stepping up
you're-
because no one else was.
If you're interested, Mr. O'Leary, I'll ask,
How about
Someone
if
to nominate Mr.
I'll just
O'Leary.
make a nomination. I'll nominate Steve to be on the,
okay, so we have a nomination. Any more nominations? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. O'Leary, say aye.
No,
Thank
no
you,
one,
Mr.
no one
O'Leary.
did second it, by the way.
Second.
So here, a second by Mrs. Manapelli.
But yeah, I just think it's, and again, need some direction from the board too.
Steve,
If we're gonna
the
do
other
it-
thing is, I don't know, where the baseball field is, and then you got the new fields too. And although I think, as I recall, the initial thing had to do with the number of stands, right?
Yeah, they're not gonna add
There
stands to
aren't
the new
any-
turf field. That's
There
not the
aren't
plan.
any at the baseball field now. but
Yeah, this is
potentially
some
could
small,
be.
this small
Some
ones.
small ones.
Small ones, yes, but I mean, I'm talking about,
Right. It's
so
not-
that potentially the issue is there too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I
Just
think
a
it's
point.
gonna be based upon capacity, and as I said, it's the
Yeah.
2 times a year that
Right.
you come in, you're gonna
It's-
get 600 people maybe.
I wonder who writes those plumbing codes, but,
Yeah, I know.
just a point of interest. I know there's been ongoing discussions of potentially about Parks and Rec maybe taking over, sort of similar to going down the road you were explaining in regards to Kerry Field. So I believe this committee's gonna go through and vet that idea as
Yeah.
well. So, and you may even see some budget changes this year as we go through that budget
I think
discussion.
I'm gonna start raising some money, because I don't know where the money's coming from to do
Yeah,
all
that's the
this,
other
but,
thing.
Mr. Manapelli,
I
That's
guess
why they have a committee to go vote for
Yeah.
it.
mine's a point of order or a point of information from the board. What is the term for this? Is it a one-year term, or
I don't know.
if it's a liaison appointment, is that gonna be a one-year?
Do you know what the school committee did with
It
theirs?
wasn't a liaison, it was a voting.
I don't know what terms they appointed for.
It may be an indefinite until it comes to fruition.
So-
Why don't we just put it-
that I haven't heard.
Why don't we just put it at
We
the-
weren't provided any
We were
information.
not provided a request for.
Jim, I'm making a
What?
suggestion to make it
Indefinite?
at the end of the
To
term of
the
your,
point.
your
Service, right.
service.
Yeah, just to ensure that the motion reflects that, you know, from a definite period, as a liaison from the board, so it has to be a member of the board. Again, we ran into that problem with the
Okay.
J.T. Berry thing.
Right,
All right, so it would be, you know, as a member of the, whatever the name of the committee is here.
right.
So we
You know, for the-
modifying the motion?
So, I
Well-
motion that
For the member's
For-
term,
we're gonna
a term
add-
as a member of the Board of Selectmen. Serve as a
Your
member.
your term, you.
Yeah,
when you-
whoever we elect.
Well, what happens in a year if you decide you don't wanna do it anymore?
Well, then there'll be another member
Then
from the board.
The
Right.
board will have to appoint another
We'll
member.
appoint another member.
So my term, your term is to expire
The
upon
18?
expiration of your
Service as
service?
a member of the board.
Right, that's,
Is that
that's how
okay?
it should be written.
Right.
Do we
We've
need to
done that
move, make a motion for that term, or is that acceptable?
I think that was Jeff's motion.
That
That was
my
in the
motion.
original
I
motion.
said
Okay.
exactly that way.
That was Jeff's motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Did you get that, Jane?
To appoint
I did.
myself as
He
a
looks
member of
puzzled.
this committee.
I got it.
Until the expiration of
wrote
my
it.
service on the board.
I wrote it,
The
Jane.
term to expire, the expiration of my service
Yeah.
on the board.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second by Mrs. Manapelli with appropriate modification. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Steve. We're going to review
Before you
the,
know, he's gonna be on the school committee.
oh, there's a contest there. right here.
Is there?
There is?
Jane, I wrote it
Oh,
all.
I haven't
Did I
heard
hear
that.
that? There were 3 members, 3 papers taken out? Is that correct, Robert?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Who,
I don't-
who,
Someone's unhappy with transgender, I think.
Oh, okay.
Oh, boy.
No?
well, it's,
Next
Whatever.
subject.
Okay, next subject.
read the paper, right?
Review of the FY 2017 revenue plan, Ms.
Mr. Chairman, I know that we received some updated information from the governor at Friday's MMA annual meeting, but I'd like to suggest that we hold off on reviewing the revenue and expenditure report until the next meeting, 2 weeks, which will be immediately prior to the filing of the town administrator's recommendation.
Okay?
His
So-
budget's coming out Wednesday.
Yeah,
Did
we did get.
Did we have them
governor's
sit here
numbers.
for no reason? And we cut them loose?
They were updating the spreadsheet in case it was the board's desire to have the discussion, but I would not recommend it at this point.
This is why you said 8:30, because you knew you were gonna cut this off, didn't you?
No, I did not.
I threw a lunch in the deal, and he goes, well, okay, we'll just cut this out.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Abby came for the other anyway.
Well, she likes hanging out with
Yeah.
us.
All right, so we're going to hold off on that.
I would suggest that, Mr. Chairman.
On the town administrator's report, you want to give a quick summary of what went on at the MMA show, or do you want me to do it later?
I'm happy to offer what at least the governor's comments were as they relate
Mhm.
directly to the town's budget. It certainly relates to this item. Governor attended, as he did last year as well, and presented his local aid numbers. And encouraging news is that he's recommending in the budget to be released on Wednesday increases both in the Chapter 70 account and in the unrestricted general government aid account. So that certainly is welcome news. We're reconciling those projected increases against what the revenue plan identified for FY '17, and we'll have a more updated report at the next meeting. He also made reference to the municipal modernization bill that was filed in December, and it's in the process of being referred, or has been referred to, I think, 5 committees he identified in his presentation, and is asking for advocacy. So something that we'll certainly monitor from the standpoint of the town, and I'm sure we were all receiving the MMA updates as well with regard to that bill. But the governor presented that it's a good faith effort to try to basically modernize some of the statutory obligations that we have to live within that aren't necessarily reasonable in the 21st century. Beyond that, I'll leave it to Selectman Yule or Messeri to add any other comments, but there were a number of workshops that were held that I know we attended, that I think that we each found to be useful. The regular town administrator's report. First, attached is a copy of the Attorney General's approval of the bylaw amendments approved at the October 2015 town meeting. In particular, the editorial revisions section, funerals and interment, snow removal on streets and sidewalks, and the zoning map updates. I would just offer a note with regard to snow removal on streets and sidewalks. The Public Works Director, myself, the Police Chief, and the Finance Director met this afternoon to discuss implementation, and this would be effective at midnight this coming Thursday, January 28th. And our consensus in terms of how to implement based upon the parameters of the bylaw is to, rather than exercise police resources for issuing fines over the course of at least 3 days to generate compliance, it'd be our intention to, again, by mail, in a notice to go out this week, to implement the removal of the snow from the sidewalk using the authority granted under Chapter 80, whereby we can then go back and assess the property owners, well, first the owner, the occupant or tenant of the property for the cost, but then ultimately can lien the cost back to the property owner if they don't comply. The bylaw as revised provides the opportunity to pursue either of the two alternatives, and I think it's our consensus that from a public safety standpoint, the more expeditiously we can get the sidewalks cleared, the better off for everybody involved. We certainly have the authority to proceed in this direction. And probably what's changed most significantly is we have the equipment to do so with the acquisition of the new sidewalk snowplow that was bought at the end of last year, funded in FY16's budget. So I kind of put that out as a notice to make the community aware of it. We're going to be mailing to property owners as well to advise them of that. One of the factors that kind of went into the discussion is the fact that we as a property owner have areas that we have to go to remove snow along Main Street because we are the principal owner of the property, and we will be out there anyway. But I think the consensus is that this is the best way in the interest of getting the sidewalk cleared in a timely fashion to handle this issue. The cost that would be assessed would be apportioned based upon the frontage that a property has as a portion of the route that from which the snow is removed. And that's, again, based on what the bylaw allows for the assessment of the cost. And the Public Works Director has put together the data to identify exactly what the frontage is for each of the parcels that would be involved. The final thing that I'll note is that it would be our intention to implement basically from the Reading Town line north to roughly the Stop and Shop Plaza, the northernmost active Stop and Shop Plaza, because there's continuous sidewalk along that area with a few minor interruptions, but not much. On the southbound side, the consensus is that there are many fragments north of Lowell Road that it's hard to implement on. So we would focus on the area between Lowell Road and just south of Winter Street on the southbound side, as well as from the Walmart south to the town line in Reading. So I wanted to provide that update based on the fact that the new bylaw has been approved. And again, it was our sense and the consensus in the discussion that this would be the most efficient way to enforce and to get the snow removed from the sidewalks using this tool that's been approved.
Michael?
So you talk about the cost and that you're going to charge.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me the formula of what you're going to use? Because I'd want to make sure that we capture the real cost here.
We had a substantial discussion with this, including the finance director, and the cost would include any personnel or contracted time that's required to be used. I asked the Public Works Director to build in the federally approved deterioration rate that we use when we go and request reimbursement for the use of our own equipment for an emergency. If there's a requirement to use any contracted equipment in addition to the town staff, that would obviously be built into the operation. Any police detail that might be required in the interest of public safety with regard to the traffic on Main Street would be included. And then a reasonable amount for the administrative oversight that needs to take place here in the town hall. That number will vary, to be truthful. It's difficult for me to sit here and identify a number right now because for a smaller storm it might be lesser, but for a larger storm it might be very large. And unfortunately, well, I should say, the bylaw does not obligate the town to go out and remove the snow. However, that's an important fact because if we have a stretch of weather like we had last winter, we won't necessarily be able to get to the snow removal in a timely fashion in order to remove the snow after each storm. So in a situation where you have multiple storms that have backed up, then you have a situation where the cost is going to be, higher.
Yeah,
it
I
would
just
be-
don't want us to become the person that has to take care of it.
Sure.
We should put the enforcement on them and make them responsible for doing it, and we should be the worst case scenario.
Mr. O'Leary?
To Michael's point, we shouldn't be cost effective.
Right.
We shouldn't be the best deal in town.
And I think we should have the accountant involved in helping us build a rate.
Right.
We
Because-
I
discussed
think
this.
that's what you were getting to, right? We shouldn't be the best deal in town.
And I mean,
We shouldn't be,
one of
we
the
shouldn't be
things,
cost
We
effective.
should be 10 times the higher rate.
Right.
maybe to help assuage some of the questions or the concerns, I mean, this work is work that would be outside what the DPW would traditionally do. And much like a lot of the work that the DPW does for other departments, it would be treated as work outside the business hours, which would be work conducted on overtime. So that would be another implication with regard to the cost. But we aren't certainly looking to go into this as a business, for sure.
No, we don't want to go in the business.
But,
That's the point.
and I think the biggest thing that I have to stress to the community is it's gonna be variable. The cost will be variable, and just because there's 3 inches of snow out there, don't assume that we're gonna come along and it's gonna be a low cost. We may not get to it. It may not be until after the next storm that we get there. So, to the properties that are subjected to the bylaw, they need to comply.
Is there still fines in there for them?
There's still the ability to fine, but we think in terms of the public safety aspect of it, getting the sidewalk removed is probably the most efficient thing. If the DPW can't get there, we'll have no choice but to issue fines.
Well,
Well, I thought we also had the ability to have a contractor come in and clean it too.
We do if we can't get to it with in-house staff.
Mrs. Manapelli, you had your hand up, I think.
you got-
He was
No,
first.
go ahead.
We are finding in addition to billing for the cost, so
They
why
just-
would we be not finding if the sidewalk is left
The
un?
discussion that we had with regard to implementation today, assuming that we're able to get out there in a timely fashion, which would be in roughly 24 hours after the end of snowfall, we would not be fining. We would be assessing the cost for removal back to those property owners.
Mr. Yule and
I-
Mr. O'Leary.
Yeah, I need to go back to the beginning, not of just tonight's conversation, but in the whole concept of the bylaw. The concept of the bylaw is that they are supposed to clear the sidewalk. If they don't, they will be fined accordingly, and if it's not done within a certain amount of time and we're able to clear those sidewalks, we will, at their own expense, at an extreme expense. So that's how, that doesn't seem to me what you're describing. Like, it sounded like you just said that they would be, well, if we can get to it in 2 days, then we'll do it.
I think it would be 1 day, but yes.
Okay, well, I don't think that was the intent of the plan. The intent of the plan is to get them to do it, and that's why we have a fine structure. And if the town can't, the town shouldn't be getting to it until at least fines have been applied, and then they are in significant violation, and then we come up and say, you haven't done your sidewalk, we're doing it, it's gonna cost you this much money, and it's very expensive.
And it should be a daily fine, too.
It is, it is.
It's a mechanism to enforce the
Yeah.
bylaw. The fine is in place to enforce that. It sounds like we're doing the reverse. We'll handle it for you, and we'll just bill you the cost,
Right.
versus after the first 24 hours, if you don't do it, you're getting the citation. And every 24 hours after that, you're getting the citation.
And
So
the
your
and the
fines are
fine,
gonna bill
right,
that.
and the fine is not an option. It's mandatory that they are fined within certain periods of time, according to the
Especially
bylaw.
if the DPW has to go out and clean it up,
In
right?
addition,
Or-
that's in addition.
Right.
Well, that just stops the clock on the finding.
Right.
Yeah, but, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
My-
I tend to concur. I think they should be fined and billed.
I guess my understanding, the way I thought, and the direction that we were headed with this is that the fines get in place, and we continue to fine. We're expecting the business owner, whoever's responsible, to remove the snow. In the case of safety, if it isn't getting done, then the town, that's what the addition to the bylaw was, the town would step in, clear the path, and bill the owner for the cost through some formula.
Plus the
Right.
fine, yeah.
But I don't think we want to get into you know, if we wanted to get into the business, then let's forget the fines altogether and just go plow the sidewalk,
That's not a
right?
contract with the property
Right.
owners.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't want-
And we don't want.
So it would seem to me, when you talk about, Michael, you talk about DPW not being able to get to it, right? You know, after, we're giving the owners a little bit of time to get the snow cleared. And then if they're in default, they're gonna get a fine, they're gonna get a fine, and if it's gonna continue, then either DPW or we're gonna hire a contractor to go and remove the snow, and they're gonna pay for it. But I don't, you know, I would think that is gonna be the rarest, I would hope that that's only happens on occasion rather than every time we have a snowstorm.
Right.
It would seem to me that the fines ought to be enough. I know we can't fine over a certain amount, but,
Well, just because our bylaw says we can.
well, I know, I think there's a state statute too, right?
There may be a statutory limitation,
Yeah.
yes.
No, it's.
So what's the
it's-
intention?
I don't think
it's-
so.
Well, I mean, I hear the feedback. I mean, what I would suggest is, right now, the fine structure requires us to go out there at least one time prior to, well, at least twice, to be able to enact a fine, because we have to go out and issue a warning.
Right.
I do think we need to look at that at the upcoming
This is-
June town meeting.
When we were having this discussion as a warrant article, this is the one area where I was voting against it, because I thought the fine schedule was wrong. It was low, it was too low. It didn't motivate them to go out and do their responsibilities. And I think that's where we should be focusing our attention, is on that fine schedule, and not going out and sending our guys and our equipment out.
Would it be too much to ask to get a policy written associated with this?
To get a,
Then the
what-
board, a policy
Well, you have one.
based on the bylaw.
Well, I think
We have a-
it's pretty clear.
Well, I think the bylaw is pretty regimented. I'm not
It
sure
is.
what room
It's
there is
written
for
as a
policy.
policy.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, Michael, you're suggesting right now, there may be instances where we will be out there clearing the sidewalk prior to the implementation of the double notices of the fines, from a public
What I
safety
wanted in
standpoint.
there was how we
That's
would
correct,
develop
yeah.
the
Alright.
fine and all
So
this.
Bob, did you get that?
Do that, tell me.
But what the administration is suggesting that may occur here is that, based upon what's happening out there weather-wise, DPW from a public safety standpoint may go and clear the sidewalks before the two notification requirement for the fine is
Oh, I didn't know
implemented.
that.
No, that,
It's coming back
I'm
to,
just, I think it's
If-
what,
Kelly had her hand up,
Mrs. Menapelli.
it's always a public safety issue for someone to clear their sidewalk in a snowstorm. And we already have people out there on a regular basis policing, surveilling the landscape that are gonna see that it's not done. They're out there already. They're already clearing the roads and they're already clearing the city sidewalks. So it doesn't make sense that we would give a pass to a business owner like this, which is completely inconsistent with the intent of implementing the fines and the enforcement mechanism via the fines. They're out there, they see that it's not done. There's plenty of publicity around this issue, so people, it's not a surprise, it shouldn't be a shock that someone's gonna get a citation for not clearing their sidewalk. It's already their obligation to do that anyway, not the towns.
No, there's clearly no obligation on the town with regard to the
Right.
bylaw.
So it's already a safety issue, which is the
Yeah.
whole purpose of us taking it up in the bylaw anyway.
I think, I guess what I'm trying to note is that in order to make the fine structure incentivize compliance, it requires multiple visits for us to go. In order for us to effectively account for what we've noted, it has to be logged, which we could do to a certain extent, but in order to effectively trace it back to who we're going to assess the fine, the cost, if we have to go out and do it, we really have to set up an enforcement, basically, operation in order to effectively do it, which is fine, that's okay, but it is time and resource consuming. And I think we would want to look at altering the fine structure at the next town meeting if we have the ability to do so. But I understand, if the board wants to proceed with the fines, then we can certainly proceed with regard to the fines.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if we're sending our people out there, if the storm happens on a Monday, and our people have to go out there and clear it on a Thursday, it's pretty much a matter of obviousness that it's 4 days, the first 24-hour period, and 3 more days that it hasn't been cleared up.
Mhm.
So 3 days' worth of fines, that's pretty clear.
I would agree, except that I believe the bylaw calls for each day to constitute each violation
24-hour
to
period.
constitute a separate
Yeah.
offense. I mean, we
Right.
could try to approach it that we assess all of the
Right.
steps in one step, if that's what you're suggesting.
Sure.
I can't profess to know whether that would hold ground in terms of the fines if they were appealed, but I mean, we could approach it that way.
So if they have to clean it up, let's say on the Thursday, they
Mhm.
know that it hasn't been cleaned, nothing's been done
Mhm.
since a storm date, which they've been out anyway, clearing the streets and the sidewalks, so.
Mhm. I think,
Mr.
what may-
Yule,
just on that, what may be problematic is the language that requires a warning to be issued. We would need to do that. We may be able to tally the days afterwards, but we would still need to issue a warning first, I would think.
Before we get a fine.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is implementation, just doing it. I would almost agree with what Mike was saying about the fines not being high enough, except for the fact is that we've never really tested it. We've never implemented the fines. We never followed the requirements of the bylaw and such as written, and therefore, there's no reason for the businesses to comply because it's just a paper law from their perspective. So if we gave a full push this winter, I would be willing to bet my house that next winter be much less, much less. It's a matter of getting the message across and letting them know that this is going to cost them money. They'll start making those sidewalks clear. Usually at the beginning, you have to put in the effort to make it easier down the line. And as, you know, and I've said this before, had we just simply implemented the bylaw that we had a couple of years ago, I don't think we'd be having this discussion right now. I really don't. So it's a matter of just, let's push it, let's implement it, let's make it happen, and we'll have clear sidewalks.
so all the business owners who have sidewalks in the town of North Reading, under the bylaw that need to be removed, have been given a written notice, specifies the timeline that they have to remove the snow,
Well, I think
the fine, and the circumstances beyond.
they've been provided public notice of the existing bylaw, not the bylaw that goes into effect at midnight on Thursday. We're
Right.
developing a
So we're gonna
notice that
send
we-
another notice.
We're going to send another notice. I certainly wanted to have this conversation so that the board understands what the intention was for implementation. And I think there's been some good feedback as to how to implement.
So I just want to make sure that the board is on the same page here. Under the changes that we made, it's not our intent, without giving the owners of the property an opportunity to remove the snow after a notice and perhaps a fine, right? That we're not just going to go out and plow the sidewalks and send them a bill. I'm trying to, where's everybody's head on this?
I would agree with that assessment. We're not going through this process to be in the business of removing snow. So therefore, when we have to come to do it, all right, that means you've been delinquent in clearing that sidewalk, creating a safety issue that the town has determined that it has to remedy right away, and it's going to be at the cost of the business. So your description is correct.
Is everybody on the same page? Because if we're not, then I think,
Yeah, I believe we are. I think I need some clarification from the town administrator as far as what he anticipates the timeline to be once the snow stops.
Okay, so 24 hours after the snow, well, first, we'll mail a notice this week of the implementation. And the implementation will state that 24 hours after the storm has stopped and the snowfall has stopped, a warning will be issued. At some point, probably 2 or 3 days after that point in time, we would go back and issue a fine inclusive of the first $50, the second fine $100, and whatever other number of days, depending upon what day we go out there.
So why 2 or 3 days?
I believe that was the feedback that Selectman Minipelli had brought up.
What's wrong with the next day?
I think I'm trying to balance the number of times we're sending the police department out
Right.
to issue the fines.
I understand that.
With the effectiveness of the fines. That, I think I'm trying to, I thought that was a suggestion to try to balance those two. And it may be that it is a more prudent use of the police department's resources to try to get some bundling of the fines together. It can still be at the same
Agreed.
point in time, which would be the end of the fine structure before we would actually go and potentially remove the snow.
This gets back to my concern, and that is, if they have 24 hours to remove the snow, and it isn't removed in 24 hours, they get fined,
They
correct?
get a warning under the
A
bylaw.
warning,
A warning.
a warning.
A warning.
A warning,
So they don't get fined, they get a warning.
correct.
24 hours later,
They get fined.
They would get the first fine, which is, because it would be the second
Which
violation.
is how much
which
again?
$50.
$50.
and
24 hours after that would be $100, and every day
Oh.
thereafter would be $100.
so then it's $100. At which point do we tell them we're gonna remove the snow?
Initially, I think the intention was to do so somewhere around that first $100 fine amount.
Right.
Maybe later, depending upon.
I think that's at our discretion, is I think what he's getting at. It's out of discretion and availability of equipment and opportunity to do it.
You talk about mailing the first warning?
No, and it's hand delivered, probably generally hand delivered.
No, but I think that
Mr. Prisco.
Mr. O'Leary was recommending, and I fully support, is that if we're gonna get to the point where we're now delivering that last fine, we should be pulling up with the equipment to clean the sidewalk. Here's the fine, but we're also gonna plow it, and then here's the bill. You shouldn't get one or the other, you should get both.
Right, and I think we need to, I think we need to be very clear to all the businesses in writing what the intent is, what the process is.
I don't wanna send anybody out, to be honest with you, but
Right.
bylaw is the bylaw.
It's during the fining process that we have the opportunity, and I don't know if that's the right word, but, or the responsibility to deal with the safety situation, and that's clearing the snow during the fining period, which is when it, from $50, from the first day it's $50 to every $100 thereafter. Somewhere in there, we're going to remove the snow. That's all equipment allows us to do, is our personnel allows us to do.
Well, then we're not on the same page, see?
No, sure.
We're not. What you're implying is if there's a situation of safety, and, how do you define safety? People can't
Well,
walk
it's safety
on the
once there's-
sidewalk, right?
Once there's snow on the ground, on the sidewalk, it's a safety issue.
Yeah. Okay, so what you're saying is that if it isn't removed in 24 hours, the town has the right to remove the snow.
That's not how the bylaw works.
I think we have to have a consistent written document, policy, procedure, based on the bylaw. It can't vary from the bylaw, right?
I think it's
That
clear.
every business that's gonna be impacted by the bylaw has in writing, and it's been sent to them.
But that
And we
is-
can't be,
that
you
is
you
the
can't
bylaw.
say, okay, at the end of 24 hours, we've sent them in the fine, but it really needs to be plowed, so we're gonna plow it. And, and the owner's gonna come back and say, wait a minute, I'm not paying that bill because I was in the process of arranging someone to come and do it. I mean, we gotta have something very consistent.
But I think you
Mrs.
also have
Prisco.
have to allow the administration the opportunity to do it the most cost-effective manner, too. So if we're out there plowing our own set of sidewalks, and 2 doors down, they're not in compliance, it's more cost-effective for everybody to do it all at once. But I'm not disagreeing. We may be doing it within 24 hours, and people now have 24 hours to comply, 24 hours later get a warning, and then $50 for the following time. So you're actually 3 days out before they get their first fine, and
And then if we get another snowstorm, what happens?
Right.
We start all over again?
No.
You know what I mean?
Snow's not
No,
removed.
it's-
I'm not
It's
trying to be,
snowfall.
you know,
It's not the
I'm not trying to be
snowfall.
difficult, but think about the situation. It's so dynamic.
But your eyes aren't, there's people out on the street that are making that determination, that are qualified to make that determination. They're out there. Let it be at their discretion. If it needs to be done in 2 days versus 4 days, leave it to them to decide that if it's not getting done.
So it snows. 24 hours later, it snows again. Where's the clock start?
It's already started.
It's already started, the first snowfall.
Let's go, sir. I have to go back to where we started the conversation, okay? And about this rate. Because think about the resource here, this police resource, which is an expensive resource.
I fully understand.
When we
Mike.
build this rate, the cost to go out there and give them the notice, the cost to go out there and hand out the fines should also be incorporated into that rate. We should be able to recoup those costs. So it shouldn't just be about the snow plowing. It should be all of it. It should be all of it, because they're getting away with it. If we were gonna fix this problem, then we need to get serious. That's why when I said this last year, when I voted against it, because our fines, $50, they're not gonna wake anybody up. And we have that right to go and make them a lot higher. But to me, if we now have the latitude to give them the 50, to give them the 100, and to recoup the time for the police officer to go out there on those multiple occasions, and for the plowing of the snow and the administrative costs, and then we're talking.
That's not
Now
the
we're
bylaw.
talking. It is the bylaw.
No,
We
you
have the
can't-
discretion.
You can't recoup police work in the removal of snow. I don't think you could do that. That doesn't-
Police to go out and hand the notices,
Is
and the
it
police to go and
administrative?
hand out a fine, and the police to go hand out another fine, plus all labor intensive, and we should be able to recoup those costs. When we go out and plow that snow, it should incorporate all of that.
That's something I think we can.
Michael.
If they don't pay the fine.
We
If
can,
they pay the
I
fine,
think we
get it
can,
done.
we can seek.
Bingo. If they pay the fine, they get it done, then all that risk goes away.
Right, yeah. I think we can seek guidance from the Department of Revenue about what we can include, not include.
Please.
I mean, I think we all agree we want to include all of the costs. I don't think
Because
that's.
we can't keep using our police force to do this. We can't. It doesn't make sense. There's an opiate issue going on in this town. There's other things that are going on in this town that are really a public safety issues they need to be focusing on. And the sidewalk thing is just driving me crazy. We deal with it every year. Our commercial owner, property owners aren't taking it serious. So until we get really firm on this and we start holding them
I
accountable,
think a lot of them are. I think there's a minority that are not.
I hope that's the case, Steve, I really do. Then it's gonna be easy. Then the police should be coming back with saying, I only got 1 or 2 here. Good, we charge them a significant rate, and we move on.
Mr. Yule.
Yeah. I'm not looking at the bylaw right now, but I did review it about a month ago. I don't believe there's any wording in there that says that we have to wait for snow to occur to give a warning to remove the snow within 24 hours. That is not worded in our bylaw. The bylaw says that if it snows, you have 24 hours to plow your sidewalk. So that's how
So you say issue the warning now.
you can, I've suggested this.
In July.
Do it right now, the first day of winter, as far as I'm
Oh,
concerned.
my Lord.
Mr. Gilberto.
No one would,
Lawyer.
I think no one would rather do that than myself or perhaps the police chief.
That would get-
But I think that part of the issue we face is that the language states, it's specific to offense, to each offense. And we can't cite with a warning before the offense has occurred. I think that's where we get hung up in the language. I'm open to any of the revisions that have been discussed with regard to this to make the issue of the fine
But that's
more
an
expeditious.
interpretation, isn't it?
No.
Well, I have to make reasonable interpretations in terms of what we can defend if we're challenged, which my understanding in the past is has been at least challenged at the board level, and perhaps could be challenged elsewhere. But I welcome it, believe me. We really, the more we can streamline this, the better.
Again, how I read it a number of times, and it was just a matter of, you get a warning that if it snows, you have 24 hours to remove that snow. Doesn't say anything about you have to have a snowfall for that to be implemented. However, you can't fine them for not removing snow that isn't there. That's pretty given. So as soon as you get your snowstorm, you can then say, you've gotten your warning, all right, now it has snowed, you have 24 hours. It's pretty self-explanatory there. So it's not incident related. It's in this case, it's that the warning is not incident related. It's just a warning that if it snows, you have 24 hours.
Well, it's like the city, they have snow emergency timeframes, from November 1st to
Right.
April 15th,
That's right.
whatever it is.
That's right.
These are the rules that are in place, so hereby we warn.
That's right.
Right?
That's how they do it in Boston. If I didn't shovel my sidewalk,
You don't
they-
have 24 hours.
They didn't send me a letter saying I get a warning. They just said, ignorance is no excuse of the law. That's the one I get.
They issue a citation, and I don't think it's just the police that can issue the citation. I think that may be where we want to broaden who has the ability to, you know.
Issue a parking ticket, basically. or
Yeah,
something like
exactly.
that.
I think they have a lot more individuals that have the authority to be able to drop the ticket off
Pay somebody
Special
than we do
commissions.
right
Yes.
now. But I do.
So I hope you
All
have
right,
sufficient
we're-
guidance.
Right,
No,
I
think we
think
do.
it's,
I mean-
I think it's gonna be incident and location specific if you're gonna start a fining process. And so-
Defining, yes, but not,
All right, so I'm going to ask it in a little different way. How many days, right, after a snowstorm, if the snow isn't removed, do we go and remove the snow?
I think, to answer the question, the first warning is at 24 hours, the $50 fine is at 48 hours, the $100 fine is at 72 hours, and at some point thereafter, we will remove. We may not remove until further than that time frame, maybe at 96 hours, or maybe at 120 hours.
Yeah, but I think we need, I think we need to be consistent.
Well,
Now, you're concerned about resources, right?
Mhm.
I think that's where you're saying after 72 hours. I'm saying that we ought to be able to tell
I
the
think-
owners of the property that have sidewalk that is in the zone that needs to be removed, that at the end of 72 hours, if it's not removed, the town is going to remove the snow.
Well, you may be subject to. But I think it's gonna be, as soon as the warning is issued, I think any time after that, it's fair game, depending upon the availability of resources to do it. And
Right.
again, the sooner we do it, the less they.
So
the
what
less
you're
they pay in
saying is you
fines.
don't even wait for the fine.
Not
You don't even
necessarily.
wait for the 48 hours.
Right. If they're in a fine situation, or they're in a situation where they're gonna be fined.
Fine, it's a fine situation.
It's a
You got
fine
me
situation.
into
If they're in a
it.
situation where they can be fined, they're subject to the removal. As far as I'm concerned, they've got the 24-hour warning, get it, you got 24 hours, you get another day for warning to get it done. After that, it's fair game, depending upon the resources and availability of our.
Ms. Manapelli?
Well, we talked about this at length during the
We'll do it some more,
implementation
too.
process. We weren't gonna do that because there might be a situation, even though it's a public safety, that we're not doing anything at all. So why would we put a limit like that on it and say, by this point, we're gonna do it?
No, I think I'd
It's-
put them on
it's
notice
really
as to
up
when
to
we
the-
may be doing it, as soon as.
But that's what the warning does. That's what the warning is. So
Well,
we
that-
might
To
do
Bob's
this,
point,
but-
they need to be told
Exactly right.
when can they expect to get the fine and potentially a bill from the town for snow removal.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point, I just want to be, I wanted them to get something in writing that describes exactly what we're
Give
gonna
them
do.
the bylaw.
If that exactly what we're gonna do is, after the third period of fine, right, the town has a right to remove the snow without saying that we're gonna remove it on that day or the next
And
day
if
or
we
a
happen-
month from
we
now.
happen to get to
I
it on the
don't
sixth
care.
day, they're gonna get fined $450 and get a bill. If we happen to do it on the first day of the thing, they get the $50 and a bill.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to mandate that. You want to leave it up to the discretion, but for
Right,
the
but there's
people that
gotta
are
be
out
a
there.
certain time limit, to me, it's a certain,
What
when can
I
we go
want
do
is it described on a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's
some
what the
people-
That
bylaw
everybody
does.
knows what the rules are.
That's the bylaw says
It's the
that.
bylaw.
So,
Does the bylaw say that, Michael? I don't
Yes.
think so.
It describes parallel issues, fines and removal of
Right.
the snow. We can remove
So
the snow
I
at any
think
point
what we have
after
to
24
do,
hours.
what we have to do, in layman's language, take and extract, making sure that what we put on paper doesn't violate the bylaw,
Right.
and send it to those people that are in the snow zone. Yes, Jim?
But my concern is if we do that, might get ourselves into a legal quagmire. So the bylaw says this, and you're sending us this letter, to me, they're not the same, I'm taking
That's
you to
not
court.
what I
Yeah,
said.
no, he's to make it consistent.
I know you mean make it consistent, but I'm talking about the guy, somebody wants to challenge it, okay? And they will, they will challenge it. I think the presentation
Why
of the
is it so
bylaw,
hard?
the presentation of the bylaw is sufficient.
This plus the cost of removal.
but,
Because it's a lot easier to just dish out the fines and move
yeah,
on.
yeah.
We should never be plowing these sidewalks. We should have never agreed on doing that. But this is where we're at. And the $50 fines ain't gonna do anything. And again, and I believe Mr. O'Leary is 1,000% right when he says, we're only talking a handful here. So we should have the fine significant enough to wake up these handful of people.
If they don't do it, it'll be significant. If they don't do it, it's gonna be
It
significant.
has to be.
And we're gonna follow through and
So you know
levy
what?
the property if
And
need
I-
be.
But, Mr. Misery, at this point, for the sake of moving on, we have a bylaw. The town meeting voted on it. I don't have to like it, but we have it. So we need to implement it as it's written. And I think now at this point.
By the way, I'm not trying to not implement it the way it's written. I just want to make
I know
sure.
you're not. I wasn't insinuating that. I think what you're saying is, you're just trying to make it crystal clear.
Right.
And I agree with you
exactly.
1,000%, but the town administrator has it. I think he's got the feedback at this point. I think we gotta move on. I don't think there's anything
Oh,
else
I'd
we
like to
can do.
move on.
No, I think he has. I think you have it.
I'm
Don't
gonna
waive
ask him.
fines. Don't waive the
Can,
fines.
can you put something together from the
I've got
bylaw,
it.
or send the bylaw?
Clean
around?
as the driven snow.
I've got it.
It's
Okay.
as clear as mud, and he's got it.
Okay,
Thank you for the feedback.
we're still on
Perhaps
the
the
town
longest town
administrator's
administrator's
report.
report in history. I'm not even
You
done
did,
yet.
you broke the record.
We've got 2 minutes till 8:30.
We'll give you kudos in your review.
Anything else in your report, Michael?
There are a couple of items. The first is, I just want to recognize and thank the employees at Teradyne who have been donating a raffle basket during the holiday season to the Council on Aging for 11 years. The basket's raffled off and raises almost $600 for the Senior Center's fire safety program, which this year replenished the account used to buy carbon and smoke detectors for seniors. They've been doing this for some period of time, but Council on Aging Director advised me, I just want to make the community aware that we have a great community partner over at Teradyne, particularly the employees at Teradyne. Thirdly, for the board's information, attached is a copy of the fire station study as prepared by KBA Associates. The study was presented to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee on January 20th. Additional short-term improvements are scheduled to be discussed on January 27th, this Wednesday. While we did not make a recommendation as to the next steps, the chief, the DPW director, and I continue to evaluate options to bring forth for further public discussion. I'd also note that the chief has briefed the leadership of the union at the fire station, and that among the feedback that we got at the Capital Improvement Planning Committee was to look more closely at alternatives for the cost and viable options for replacement of the facility as well, if that is something that we could be looking further into. So those are all items that are kind of on the table for discussion right now, as we look at what the best course of action is for the town moving forward. It is very early. This is the first step in looking at a study of the facility as it stands right now. It's caused some more questions to come up, and we're going to continue to evaluate them. And I just want to make sure the board's kept informed. So you have that study. The final thing that I'll note is that some in the community may have observed, we are having some difficulty with the elevator at the library. Right now, the elevator is not functional. It's awaiting our elevator contractor coming out and doing some testing with regards to its operability. It's something that the Public Works Department is on top of, in particular the superintendent, the facility superintendent. But I asked the community to bear with us while we resolve this issue, and we'll be proceeding to resolve it as quickly as we can. But we need to understand more about the cause as well, and make sure that the equipment is safe before it's returned to operation. Thank you.
The report was a very nice report. There was really
Yes.
a lot of detail in it.
Yeah.
It was good.
Okay. Mr. O'Leary.
It's all the new business. Okay, the only thing that I'd like to report is that I was able to go to a fundraiser in Malden on Saturday night, despite the weather, for Mystic Valley Elder Services. They have their annual, one of their annual fundraisers, and first of all, I want to compliment the people that were able to go out and brave the storm and the weather conditions and the road conditions. The interesting thing was we headed out about 6 o'clock, and we didn't pass a plow from here to Malden, and the roads really hadn't been cleared. So it was amazing how late the plows were to get out everywhere. But even 93 hadn't been plowed. But anyway, they had about 350 people that braved the storm and went out and did it. And I just want to mention once again, remind people that the services that we receive from Mystic Valley Elder Services are vital and essential for a number of people in our own community. And the fundraiser the other night raised enough money to serve 5,000 meals. So congratulations to Mystic Valley. Again, thank them very much for their services. And it was a funny night. It was a comedy night, so it was good. That's all,
Thanks,
Mr. Chairman.
Jeff?
Yes, again, I want to express my sympathies to Maureen Stevens, passing of a mother. It's a difficult time for anyone at these times, and I just pass on my sympathies. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say. Be quiet today.
Just since we're talking about the snow and the snow and the ice and the storms and all that, I mean, I have noticed on Central and I've noticed on Park, and it's Park, Central, and North. A lot of lead-foot drivers, I guess you could say. So calm down, realize you can't see what's underneath the road, slow down. There's tons of families, there's tons of walkers, tons of kids, you know. Be safe and careful. That's all.
It's one of the hazards that we've always had on Central Street over the years. Every time we hot top it, the speed accelerates.
Speed, crazy
The potholes and
speed.
stuff like that actually are a deterrent for people to drive.
It's
quick.
30 miles per hour, 35 miles per hour.
It really is.
Slow down.
It's a tough road.
There's a lot of kids that walk
Yeah.
around there.
No, it's an issue.
Maybe, you know, on Orchard Drive, they put that sign, I think it's been
Oh,
helpful.
so I was gonna
They
make-
also have one on, and we've got some feedback from the neighbors on Chestnut. Maybe we need one up on,
Well, I talked to the chief
Central
about it,
Street.
and he is gonna put some in his budget this year because he has found out that they actually have been effective.
Yeah.
And so he probably is gonna put one on Central Street, but I believe you'll hear that in his, report on that Saturday when he comes in and talks about his budget.
It's a speed, a
The
speed-
digital,
the
the
digital
digital
speed?
speed limit sign,
Yeah.
yeah, so it
and
flashes when you
a
go
white
over,
light when you're over.
and it
the
does
limit.
force people to hit the brake.
And it should, now,
That's
we
like
should
the-
have the technology to take someone's picture when they're over the speed limit.
That's what
and
my
issue
wife
them a
says every time I go
Yeah.
down the street and the light's blinking. He says they're taking your picture. Mr. Briscoe.
Mr. Gilberto, the last meeting, I talked about the trash and recycling, and I'm not sure if you had any update and any improvement or any message got out to the contractor?
All of the above, although I'd be the third part improvement, we'll see what tomorrow brings, but the Public Works Director and I did meet with representatives of JRM this afternoon and relayed to us our concern and our dissatisfaction with regard to the performance under the contract, which expires in 2018, just 2 short years from now. I think that they took the criticism constructively. They did note that the time of year is a challenge because the number of daylight hours is so limited. They also expressed that there have been some challenges at the Covanta facility in Haverhill with regard to the ability to dispose of the tonnage that's in the equipment, and they've been experiencing some delays, and they committed to find an alternative to that location in the event that the delays continue. They identified that their equipment is in good shape. There may be isolated instances that are weather-related, but otherwise the equipment is in good shape. They also are going to approach us with some alternatives to maybe reduce the risk and spread out the collection beyond one day to see if it's something we would entertain. I've told them that I think that we're satisfied with the concept of the collection taking place in one day, but that we would be certainly open to any options and the financial incentives that could be offered for those options as well. So I think it's going to be a continuing discussion over the next few weeks. They gave us some assurances that things should improve tomorrow and should stay improved for a period of time based
I
on some
appreciate
things
that.
going on up at Covanta. But they are preparing for another shutdown at Covanta at some point in the month of June for some maintenance that needs to take place, and they're working on a contingency plan for that point. So I was going to offer that, but the next town administrator's report, but I'll provide it now.
The other thing I want to bring up is, as we're going into the budget season, is, we did the iPads, it was under a grant, and I think the iPad implementation has been great for both CPC and the Board of Selectmen. But the issue that I think you see forthcoming is the technology now has come 5 years, and sooner or later, you're not going to be able to update those iPads. As a matter of fact, you probably won't even be able to use the software we're currently using as we go down the road. So I really would recommend, and I don't think we ever figured it would go beyond 5 years, right? We did talk about updating these pieces of technology. Now, for us, for our board members, I believe you have a new one. So I would like to suggest that we get Mr. O'Leary and Mr. Yule, put it in the budget this year, because the technology really needs to be
Whoa,
updated.
whoa, whoa, I don't have a new one. What? This is
You
like
gotta
a
hand me
first.
down.
That's newer than
That's
theirs,
newer than this one.
believe it or
Now,
not.
the very, let me explain, the very first edition, right, is the only edition that
This is an
the
old
latest
version of
operating systems that they've released on a regular basis can be
This is
installed.
like version
All the
one.
other ones are current enough to have the latest OS installed on it.
But I-
However, that being said, the year from now, it'll be,
Yeah, it's coming.
number 1 and 2 will be no good, so.
What I think
I
we
shouldn't say
should-
no good,
We
but,
should consider it if we can afford it, because it's not a massive, this is not an expensive item anymore, because of a lot of other,
We have to offer
these
it generation.
services that are out there now and the other options that are available. I think the cost is very reasonable. I think we should consider it. You don't need to get me one unless I'm not reelected or Bob's not reelected, then you'd have to get those. But, I bought my own, I'd rather use my own. But I think we should put it in the budget. And I only bring it forward because I see the CPC members are struggling a little bit. I've tried to help a few of them out, get caught up with their updates, which, by the way, if you're not updating it, try to. They can't. Some of the software they're using that they implemented on this won't work anymore, just because they're old. So Danielle is going to probably come see you about potentially putting in a small cap, but if the board is not
It
interested
would
in
seem
that,
to me that within the IT budget,
Well,
there is money
I
for
wasn't sure.
replacement
I was looking for direction.
equipment, so that needs to be looked at. Mr. Gilberto.
So I did speak with the finance director this morning with regard to the town's equipment needs, and in particular the iPads. And the direction that I provided her is to work with the IT director to identify all of the older generation equipment that's been issued and to come up with a proposal for replacement that would be included as either a small capital proposal for the budget, the operating budget, or an amended capital improvement planning committee proposal. I believe there was $30,000 or $35,000 in computer equipment requested. We may modify that number, but we recognize it needs to be done and intend to make a recommendation, again, with a caveat of balancing against everything else, but we recognize it needs to be addressed.
And I mean, I see with Jane, I would think you have an older version as well. So it just may make sense to look into it for all of you. That's my
it?
recommendation. And I have one last thing. So at the last meeting, I talked about the JT Berry and that we were going to get in the quotes for a commercial broker. So we had 4 companies take out the package and we had no companies return. You
Really?
didn't get any returns. Yes.
They're that
So
busy?
Danielle went out and she made phone calls to the ones that did take the packages to try to understand why. So when Michael and I first drafted the RFP, we wrote up that we wanted a market study and we wanted an appraisal. And we had that budgeted. We actually went to that October town meeting in 2014, had the money set aside for it. The Economic Development Committee said the majority voted in favor of not putting it in as a set rate. We just said, let's put it in there, and I believe the way we worded it was, let them come back and bid it in their percentage of what their percentage would be to the town. And what the feedback was, we're asking them to do a market study, we're asking them to do an appraisal, and we're asking them to do some work probably for 3 or 4 months, or maybe even a year, before they see any money at all. So I think they were a little discouraged by it and they stayed away from it. So we're in the process of rewriting the RFP. Because this board did approve the money to pay for those things, I think the EDC thought at first, let's try to see if we can get it for free, and it didn't work out that way. So we're gonna put them in there as cost we will pay for, that would be the market study and the appraisal. And I believe we talked about consultant fee as well, potentially. I'm sure you want to add a little bit more, Michael, that we would get reimbursed after the sale. So they also get about a $15,000 consultant fee. We would pay them up front for that as well, but we would get reimbursed that at the end of the sale. So they at least have some operating
So
money.
they don't get a commission on the sale then?
They would, but that $15,000 that we're gonna give them up front, that's some operating money to keep them going until we have a sale. We would get that reimbursed at the time of the sale, plus they would get their percentage, whatever they quote. So Michael, maybe you can give a little more insight if I missed anything.
No, I think you hit everything. The note I would just make is that basically the commission was, the whole thing was tied to commission in terms of the way
Right.
it was put out. Now we would isolate the market study, the appraisal, and the ongoing consultancy with the caveat, for a flat fee, and then with a caveat that we would get the consultant fee back after the, and this was, again, the EDC's proposal, not mine, but that we would get the consultancy fee back off of the commission at the end of the transaction.
And I think we'll have good results based on the feedback. I think we'll have better results.
The other thing I would just add, Mr. Chairman, is that there was a couple of suggestions from folks who are active in the field as to other areas we could advertise this, and Ms. Brooks has been actively engaging 3 entities, I think, to get it advertised, and we'll be able to have some success, I think, to get it
Yeah.
in those fields. So hopefully we'll be talking to the right people.
So in probably about another 2 weeks or 3 weeks
The
or so.
22nd will be due.
Yeah, we'll be able to give you some more feedback. So that's it. That's all I have.
Mr. Yule.
I just wanted to understand the term flat fee. If we would charge them a flat fee, or they would charge us a
We
flat
would
fee?
pay a flat fee for the market study.
Okay.
And then on the sale of the property, because they're gonna be marketing it for us.
Right.
On the sale of the property, they'll get the commission less the flat fee that was paid up. So this way they're gonna get some money
Well, I
up
thought
front.
the reimbursement, refund was on the consultant fee.
Yeah, so let me be clear. We would pay them for the market study.
Right?
We're not going to get that money back. We're
Right.
paying for that. It's a capital
That's
investment.
what I thought.
We're going to pay for the appraisal.
We don't get that.
We're also going to pay for a consultant fee to give them some seed money to operate. And I'm just throwing out the number based on our research right now. About a $15,000 number should work, which, by the way, we have the money in our existing budget. And then that $15,000 consultant fee at the time of sale, we would take that off of the sale of their commission and then pay them out whatever that percentage that they're going to come back with in their proposal. Okay?
Got
So
it.
you're right, Mr. Yule. It's just a consultant fee would be reimbursed at the end.
Thank you.
So it's not a cost on the town at the end of the day.
Thank you.
So that's all I have. So we're going to keep working it as fast as we can.
So they didn't want to get into it without having some sort of financial
They have to have it.
compensation for the period of time that it would take to get it onto a signed.
So the firms have an employee that they're going to assign to us. They just need some money to pay for that, to go out and do a market study, and then go do the appraisal, and then also go out and do some of the marketing and sales work for us. They just need it to cover those costs. Because you could be talking a year, maybe even 18 months. It could be even longer, and go that far without any money at all, for a commercial, and for a property of this size, and
Could you get the board members a copy of the proposed new RFP?
Sure.
To make sure it's in
We'll
Dropbox,
put it
so
in.
everyone has
Should be
a chance to
available by
look at
Monday.
it.
I'm sorry. Is that normal? I mean, don't they all work on a commission basis? I mean, once they make a bid and they give us the bid, then they've got the business, right?
Well, but if they're not successful, they've invested a fair amount of time and effort, and they may walk away with it. Look what's happened before, so.
So based on the feedback that Danielle received when she went out and requested it from these firms, this is a typical thing for the commercial market. And for a property of that size with some of, being undeveloped, there's gonna be a lot of questions, there's gonna be a lot of research, there's gonna be a lot of work on their part to make sure whoever the potential buyer is has everything they need to make a decision. So all the firms are saying is, we're not trying to sound like we're being greedy here. It's just that I have to pay that employee to be here. I need a little seed money, so they gotta run their budgets, because they know they're gonna get that payout down the end. And that payout could be 18 months from now or 2 years from now. Obviously, our ultimate goal is to get this sold, at least a P&S in place within the 2-year limit, so we get that extra 10% in the sale partnership model. We're also considering building in an incentive to make sure we achieve that as well, and that's something we're still tossing back and forth, but it is typical. From the research that we did, it is
The
typical.
consultant fee is typical.
It's typical.
So then how do we select them if they're all gonna get, you're only gonna select one, right? But they're all gonna, whoever it is, gonna get the 15,000,
Mhm.
okay? How do you select the one? I mean, if they're all gonna get that money.
So in the RFP, we have a set of requirements, and they have to bid to those requirements, and they're
Okay.
gonna tell us how they're gonna achieve the things we're requesting in there. And each one of them will have a different strategy, and we're gonna pick the one that fits, we felt, the best strategy. The best reach, who has existing experience in doing this. And so when we read the proposal, I believe the cream will come to the top.
Right.
We're hoping that it's gonna be a difficult decision. We do. And then the final one that's gonna be, we don't get to look at, is the cost, and that is that percentage. We're not gonna see, the EDC won't see that, only the town Straits sees that. We only see the technical proposal.
Right.
When is the
And I think
RFP going?
he will make the decision based on when he opens up the financial side of, if somebody's at 10% and somebody's at 3%, he'll have a decision to make.
Right, okay.
When is the RFP going out?
Be available to the public on February 1st.
February 1st?
Yes, it'll be due back February
So
22nd.
when you get it to the point before it goes out, could you put it in Dropbox, let everybody know, so they have a chance to look at it? And if there's anything in there someone has a concern with,
Okay,
flag it.
Mr. Becerra, we've put it in there before, I think people looked at it. I just don't want to hold up this timeline, and I'm not
I'm
sure.
not asking to hold it up, that's why I asked to just put
I-
the proposed
okay.
language in
As long
so
as
that.
if we could do it and meet the timeline that we have, it's good, because if we miss this date, then, we could fall into
No, I'm
March.
not trying to
We
slow it
want
down,
to
just giving
Try to
everybody,
maximize.
everybody an opportunity to see what's going out.
Okay. Yep. No, I have no problem with that, I just don't want to miss this timeline.
Okay. Anything else, Michael?
I'm done.
So, Michael Gilberto, Jeff and I attended the MMA conference on Friday. Michael, I think, went back on Saturday. So we listened to the governor tell us, basically a little bit of what he said the night before at the State of the State. He was very upbeat. He talked about, state aid and Chapter 70 in loose terms. What he said was that, I'm trying to remember, was it 4.3 or 4.7% growth in the state budget this year? 4.3, okay. That going forward, the unrestricted state aid would be increased by the increase in state revenue. And the numbers, the initial governor's budget numbers are out, the increase is in there. It doesn't have that big an impact on our current budget because we had some percentage increase already in there. Chapter 70 wasn't quite as clear in terms of, he said fully funded, whatever that means, because there's a formula. And I know they're working on the formula. He didn't say much about a formula change this year. So we have a Chapter 70 number, which is more than we got last year by roughly $100,000. I didn't look at the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
Afterward, we split up and each of us went to a different seminar. I usually go to the finance one, which I did, and there were a couple of interesting things that came out of it. One, the first half of it, they talked about the governor's bill, which he's calling the Weed Whacker bill, the unofficial name, where they've gone through, his administration has gone through and tried to clean up a bunch of old bills, change things to make it easier for communities to operate. When that went to the legislature, they broke it into 5 bills. So the bill ended in 90, I think, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 after it, or something to that effect. And they're in different committees right now. And what I heard from the governor and what I heard later in the seminar was that they're asking for the support of all the local leaders to get behind these. I'll give you an example of a few things that he talked about. One was, and we're familiar with it, remember we had to go and deal with the DOR to allow the bond premium from the school, the $5 million premium, to be applied. In that bill, it makes it automatic. If you want to do that, you can do it. We talked about charter commissions and leaving it up to the CEO of the community to call for a charter change and take it. So you don't have to go to town meeting to get approval. Cuts out one step.
Still have to go to the ballot box to elect a charter commission, all that sort of stuff.
No, you don't have to do it that way. It can be done by the board, or the CEO, which would be the Board of Selectmen. In our case, in other cases, it might be something else. Still has to, changes would have to be approved by town meeting. So it cuts pieces out. And there's a whole slew of sometimes little things that are in our way. And it's all aimed at making it easier to get things done. And then, you know, of course, they talked about the compact group and all of that. The second piece, they talked about changes to the local the portion of the website that's related to local services. It's a local, I don't remember the acronym now.
DLS, yes.
Yeah,
I believe it's like
Department of Local Service, DLS, right? So they've redone the website, and they actually had the guy that was there to help support the secretary that was making the presentation on on about the website changes. But in there, and I tried finding it, and I have to go back and spend some time on it, but they've made it a lot easier to navigate, and there's a report section, and when you go into the reports, they actually have graphs of various elements that you might want to look at. And those graphs can be exported as PDFs, or you can actually export the spreadsheet that created those for the community. So if you want to do some analysis now, tax rate growth, population, the things that they collect in there, it's all in this graph form. And when you open up the page, there's you see a dozen or more graphs, and you can select any one of them. And they're based on various parameters over periods of years. The periods of years vary depending on the particular material. I thought that was very interesting and probably very useful. And then somebody asked the question, well, can you compare it to other communities? And he alluded to the fact that you could download the data from two communities and then make your own comparisons. So, or more for that matter. So I thought this was another big enhancement in terms of providing tools to analyze where we're going, things that we can't readily get at, or it would take us a little longer to. And here, you log onto the website and click reports, and it's right there in front of you. I thought that was pretty good. So overall, I learned a lot. Of course, you meet people and talk to people about some of the things that they're doing. And so it was very, again, worthwhile. Jeff, I don't remember which group you visited, but if you want to make a comment about it, please do.
Yeah, I went, I actually went to two. One I shouldn't have gone to. It was for small towns, and everyone says you live in a small town called North Reading, but they were talking about 5,000 people. So I left that and went to the next room, and I went to the committee with regard to the roads, doing road surveys and snow removal. What a coincidence. And one I spoke to the TA about it briefly, but the company that was there uses a truck that goes around the whole town. They have cameras, they have sound waves, and they study the roads with this truck, and they go, well, they don't only take pictures, they do a lot of in-depth work in understanding the thickness of the road and where it is at that time. And they also, the TA from Beverly, or DPW director from Beverly, I'm not sure what was his title, he said what he's hoping to use this program for on the truck that they have is because they work on waves, sound waves, that they want to be able to find leaks in their pipes underneath the ground. And I thought that was a really nice enhancement for when you're doing a road survey. You can not only determine the condition of the road, what's going on underneath the road, but also if you have any leaks in your pipes. So I found that very interesting. It was pretty informative in that regard.
Michael, you probably went to more than one. Do you want to make any comments on any of them at this point?
I attended the Friday afternoon seminar relative to municipal liability and risk, just because I felt that it was one that crossed the paths of any department in any area, and obviously a big part of my responsibility is to try to reduce the risk with the balance, of course, the financial implication of doing so. So it was informative. I found it useful, and I think I relate to both the selectmen who were there that I probably will never sleep well again after having attended it.
Hence my chuckle.
Just blame it on us.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn the open session and return to executive session.
Second?
And then to adjourn executive session for the sole purposes of adjournment.
and I hear a second from
Second,
Mr.
yes.
Yule. Modification by Mr. O'Leary. Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Yule.
Aye.
Ms. Minipelli.
Aye.
Mr. Prisco. Chair votes aye. Take
For when you're doing a road survey, you can not only determine the condition of the road, what's going on underneath the road, but also if you have any leaks in your pipes, so I found that very interesting. It was pretty informative in that regard.
Michael, you probably went to more than one. Do you want to make any comments on any of them at this point?
I attended the Friday afternoon seminar relative to municipal liability and risk, just because I felt that it was one that crossed the paths of any department in any area, and obviously a big part of my responsibility is to try to reduce the risk with the balance, of course, the financial implication of doing so. So it was informative. I found it useful, and I think I relate to both the selectmen who were there that I probably will never sleep well again after having attended it.
Hence my chuckle.
Just blame it on us.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn the open session and return to executive session.
Second?
And then to adjourn executive session for the sole purposes of adjournment.
and I hear a second from
Second,
Mr. Yule.
yes.
Modification by Mr. O'Leary. Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Yule.
Aye.
Ms. Minipelli.
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Prisco. Chair votes aye.